I will keep going. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. Good morning. I'm Ida Jones, and I serve as president of your board of trustees. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, California, on this, the last day of May 2020. It has been an especially long and hard week for Black people in this country. On Monday, Minneapolis resident George Floyd was pinned down on the ground, handcuffed by a white law enforcement officer who murdered him slowly with a knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. Anger, rage, pain, and 400 years of oppression built up over the next days and erupted yesterday afternoon and evening all over the country. On a personal level, this awful event is a reminder of my anger that my oldest son could have been a victim as he was regularly stopped driving home from work in the evening, including times when guns were drawn. A reminder of my anger that my sister could have been a victim when she was handcuffed and detained because a Black woman had committed a theft nearby. Anger that any of my children or my relatives could have been and still could be victims. As Reverend Renwa Hamami, Executive Director of the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry of California, wrote to us yesterday, and I quote, "The uprising across the country is not only about George Floyd or the 1,252 Black people who have been shot and killed by police violence since January 1st, 2015. The uprising across the country is about their lives and the foundation of white primacy upon which this country's legal, police, military, economic, education, healthcare, housing, and environmental systems were built upon." End quote. Concurrently, COVID-19 deaths in this country, which have been disproportionately impacting those of us who are persons of color, COVID-19 deaths in this country crossed the 100,000 point. More American lives than were lost in the Korean and Vietnam wars combined, and just 16,000 deaths shy of the total number of Americans killed in World War I. And that is only this country's count. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, COVID-19. Let's take a moment and just breathe into and sit with that. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, we believe many things. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We believe that we are all interconnected and that we bear a responsibility to uplift and honor each person's inherent worth and dignity. This is the sacred center of our Unitarian Universalist faith, which calls us to love inclusively and work for justice. Let me also say that as Unitarian Universalists, we believe Black lives matter. Each and every Black life matters. And Reverend Tim will honor the life of George Floyd and many other Black lives this morning. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, we welcome you no matter race, culture of origin, age, spiritual background, or religious beliefs. You are welcome if you're lesbian, gay, trans, questioning, or non-binary. We welcome you no matter your differing abilities, the amount of money in your bank account, or your level of education. You are welcome with or without documentation. No human being is illegal at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno. Todos son bienvenidos aquí. If we were in the physical sanctuary, this is when we would say good morning and shake hands. Here, in our new sanctuary created by a combination of love and technology, let's take a moment to imagine the different colors of our faces looking at our smartphones, tablets, screens, and TVs. Now, with my rage and my love, I gently pass you to Reverend Tim for the beginning of our service.
Muchas gracias. Ida, and thank you for your centered and wise leadership of our board and our congregation during this time of pandemic and social uprising. Well, dear ones, this week we spent a lot of time preparing for a service about patience. And last night by 6 p.m., it was clear to all of us that that service and most of it needed to just be set aside for another week, and that we needed to create a time of being together this morning that reflects, as Ida so powerfully said, the rage, the pain, the sorrow, the 400 years, yesterday and today. And so we've gotten kind of fancy lately with some of our technology, but we're going back to just creating the worship in the moment, much of it unscripted. And so as Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, the president of our denomination, said back about 14 weeks ago, what we're doing is not about perfection. It's about creating a container for connection and love. And in that container of connection and love, in a moment, I will gently pass you into the home of Danny, where she'll be lighting our chalice. But before we do that, let the gentle, quiet sound of the tingsha carry us to that knowing place within us, among us, and yes, beyond us.
Hola, soy Danny. Hi, I'm Danny. I'm the Interim Director of Lifelong Learning here at UU Fresno. Today, our chalice lighting words are by Amy Carroll Webb. How often we seek refuge in this sacred flame from the world's trouble and pain. Today, may our lamp light the way. For those who know no refuge, that we may open our hearts, our minds, our arms, and our mouths to sing, Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón, cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraígame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life. In the beginning of the Jewish scriptures, the book of Genesis, it says that the Ruach, the Spirit, the Fuente de Amor. The Spirit of life was breathing over the waters, and it was out of that divine breath that all of this, all of us, came into being. In the Eastern traditions, they call the breath prana, the life force. And however you are feeling about life, your life, and our collective lives this morning, I invite you to take a breath, and for just a moment, breathe into the possibility of peace. So taking in a gentle breath in, breathing in that possibility of peace, hold for just a moment and touch that love within you, no matter how far off it might seem right now, and let that breath out, breathing out love into our battered and broken world. And again, gently breathing in the promise of peace. Hold just a moment, touch that love, and breathe your love out to a broken but still beautiful world. And one more time, breathing that breath in, the possibility of peace, holding just a moment, breathing out love, amor. As we continue breathing together, and dear ones, know this, we are together. We are connected. We're connected by our breath, connected by the beating of our hearts, we're connected by our love. And we're connected by that possibility of peace. And so as we breathe together, let that breath carry us back over the last week, the last 7 days of our living. Think back to all you saw, heard, all you were part of, all that you were not part of. And as you think of those last 7 days, what words come into your heart? What words come into your heart? If you feel so moved, you could type those into the comment box or just hold them in silence. As we're breathing together, I can't help but think of what a gift each breath we are taking is. I can't help but think of the neck of a black man as it was crushed by the knee of a law enforcement officer, someone sworn to protect and defend, who cut off the very act of breathing that we so take for granted, who suffocated the life, the precious life of a black man. A black man who asked repeatedly, George Floyd asked repeatedly for help. He asked, he said he could not breathe. And before he took his last breath, he called for his mama. And he died. He died before our eyes. I can't help but think in these days since of rage, of protest, of condemnation, I can't help but think of something that the former police commissioner of Boston said. He said, if you show up in riot gear, you're gonna have a riot. And I've just watched how different police departments have reacted to the rage and the protest, and I think how on Friday night, over almost 400 people gathered in front of our church along Alluvial Avenue. Almost 400 people, and we held signs, and we expressed our rage and our outrage, and but there was peace and there was love. There was peace and there was love. And I'm thinking of images of some police departments who showed up in other cities with riot gear, with people who were just there to peacefully protest. And I'm thinking of the difference a week or two prior when mostly white people showed up to protest the shutting down of this country. They showed up at state capitals. The mostly white crowd, they had guns. They stormed state capitals. They took over the rotunda of state capitals with guns. And what was the response? Nothing. Someone holds a sign that says Black Lives Matter. Someone has a t-shirt that says Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. And how was that met by some cities' law enforcement officers? I can't help but notice the difference. People ask me, why? Why do you display those two banners that say Black Lives Matter along Alluvial Avenue in North Fresno? My answer is George Floyd. Mr. Floyd. Suffocated as a law enforcement officer kneeled on his neck. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. For those of us this morning who identify as white, for those of us who are Caucasian, I have something to share. It's something that we found on the internet. I don't know who wrote it, or I would give it attribution. But those of us who are Caucasian, as a white presenting person, we can do so much because of the color of our skin. White privilege, dear ones, is so real. As a white person, I can go birding. I can go jogging. I can relax in the comfort of my own home. I can ask for help after being in a car crash. I can have a cell phone. I can leave a party to get safety. I can play loud music. I can sell CDs. I can sleep in my own bed. I can walk from the corner store. I can play cops and robbers. I can go to church. I can walk home with Skittles. I can hold a hairbrush while leaving my own bachelor party. I can party on New Year's. I can get a normal traffic ticket. I can lawfully carry a weapon. I can break down on a public road with car problems. I can shop at Walmart. I can have a disabled vehicle. I can read a book in my own car. I can be a 10-year-old walking with our grandfather. I can cash a check in peace. I can take out my wallet. I can run. I can breathe. I can live. I can be arrested without the fear of being murdered. White privilege is real. Please take a moment to consider a Black person's experience today. If you are a white person, if you present as white and you want to acknowledge that you do have white privilege, I ask you in the comment box to just type WP for white privilege. Just acknowledge that, please. This is the time in our service that we share. We share our joys, we share our sorrows, our gratitudes, and our concerns. If you have a personal joy, concern, gratitude, or sorrow that you would like to share with the congregation, you can also now type that in the comment box. If you're talking about somebody else, please don't use their last name because we are on Facebook Live and over 1,000 or more people will view the service at some point in the next week. Close to home within our own congregation, we want to lift up Rita T, and acknowledge that her sister is now in hospice care. It's been a long journey. Rita, we're holding you and your family in our hearts. And also, we want to lift up Tai W. Her dad and brother are struggling with COVID-19, and her mom is in quarantine after caring for them. So let us keep Tai W and her family in our thoughts and prayers. We also lift up the names of our beloveds who are currently facing health challenges. This week, all of Fresno mourned the death of Sandra Sandy Oldfield. She was a devoted nurse at Kaiser, and she treated COVID-19 patients. In March, she became ill with the virus, and this past week, she passed into the mysteries of death. We also remember Stacy Park Millburn. As reported by Democracy Now!, Stacy Park Millburn, a beloved figure in the disability justice movement, has died at the age of 33 of complications from surgery. She started the Disability Justice Culture Club in her home in Oakland, California, as a place where queer, disabled, Black, Indigenous, and peoples of color could gather and organize. After the coronavirus pandemic hit, members of the group mobilized to make and distribute hand sanitizer and provide mutual aid to the community. Earlier this month, Stacy Park Millburn spoke out against an effort by hospital and assisted living lobbying groups in California to receive immunity from any kind of liability during the pandemic. We celebrate her life. We also mourn the loss of and celebrate the life of an extraordinary individual, Larry Kramer. He was among the first in the nation to speak out as AIDS began to spread within the gay community here in America, and then obviously beyond the gay community. He had a time when few were even speaking words about how the virus was being passed. He initially called and urged for gay men to refrain from sexual conduct, and that, wow, he got so much backlash, but Larry Kramer saved so many lives. Many of us are here today because of the message that Larry Kramer gave us in those early days of the AIDS pandemic. On a personal note, I just celebrate his contributions as well to the theater world. His play, The Normal Heart, was one of the first plays written about the AIDS crisis. It's a remarkable piece of theater. It's on HBO in a filmed version. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to do so. And on an even more personal level, I just want to thank Larry Kramer because it was in the Boston premiere of The Normal Heart. I was working as a publicist for the Triangle Theater Company, and a really wonderful and handsome man named Jim auditioned for that production. And I remember saying to the director, you don't have to cast him, but definitely call him back for another audition because I want to meet him. And Jim and I spent 26 wonderful years together as husbands. And I will forever thank Larry Kramer for writing the play that brought us together. So thank you, Larry. Lastly, in our tradition each week of lifting up a segment of society that's working to protect us from COVID-19, today we honor the virologists, the epidemiologists, the public health specialists, the lab technicians, and all those scientists who are working to identify the virus, learn how it's transmitted, learn its weaknesses, learn how we can best stay safe, discover and study new treatments, and ultimately create a vaccine. So if you would like to lift up and celebrate all of those, just press S in the comment box for scientists, knowing it encompasses all of those people working so hard. And yes, as Unitarian Universalists, we believe in science. We believe in masks. We believe in social distancing. And we believe that right now is not the time to be gathering in sanctuaries for in-person worship. And so, for all, and I know today, all means a lot of sharing, for all that has been shared, for all that we hold in the depths and the sacredness of our own human hearts, and for all those who on this day have no one to remember them, no one to think of them with gentleness or love, no one to say their name with tenderness, we light our candle of community. By our remembering, may we and they be blessed. As is our custom, we light a second candle this morning. This flame burns for the now over 100,000 Americans who have lost their lives to COVID-19, but more importantly, for all those worldwide, because we are all one world. The over 365,000 citizens of planet Earth who have lost their lives to COVID-19. Let us sing. Let us pray through words and music. Our call to meditation, comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. Consuélame, 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 O mi alma.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Consuélame, 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 oh mi alma. Consuélame, 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 oh mi alma. Speak to me, speak to me, speak to me, oh me, oh my soul. Háblame, 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 oh mi alma. Háblame, 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 oh mi alma. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Our words for prayer and reflection come from the heart and soul of Unitarian Universalist Jennifer Kwong. It's called Abiding Anger. Dear ones, let us pray. I need a fishbowl where I can bracket hope for a while. I need a container to let my grief fill the cup before I pour it out. I need to feel the pain, the sorrow, the crushing of my soul from racism, sexism, heterosexism, capitalism. I need to be in touch with my raw anger. I need to weep until my eyes become bloated. I need to stay awake at night, sleepless from the rage inside me. Don't get me past hope just yet. Let me abide for a while in my holy lamentation. As this long, hard, violent, fiery, death-filled week unfolded, each day I found myself having the impetus to walk farther and farther and farther on my walks. I don't know if I was trying to get away from something or I was trying to get myself somewhere. Maybe it's a combination of both. So this morning, walking my little Grayson, who's sitting right here looking at me, I found myself walking up to our Black Lives Matter banners on Alluvial Avenue. It was early. There was, I don't even think there was a car down the street. And I did something I'd never done before. I think my heart was just so filled with so much. I went and I stood right in the center of that triangle wedge of Black Lives Matter banners. And I prayed. I breathed. I meditated. I think I wanted to feel strength that was from somewhere else than just having to come from me. And I have to tell you, that space with those banners felt sacred. It felt as sacred as any mosque that I've prayed in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan. It felt as sacred as any church that I've prayed in Rome. And trust me, when I was in divinity school, I think I saw every church in Rome. It felt as sacred as those temples did last year when I was praying in them in China. And my dear ones, that space outside under the sky and the sun underneath our Black Lives Matter banners, it felt as sacred as our beloved sanctuary, which I know brings so many of us peace when we gather there. Finally, I started to walk down Alluvial Ave and coming up on the side of the street, running was a young Black man. And my thought was, how brave he is to run up Alluvial Avenue in Northwest Fresno. How brave he is to run up Alluvial, because in a minute he's going to cross the line into Clovis. How brave for a young Black man to run into Clovis at any time of the day. As I watched him run, I thought of Ida's son, Kenneth. She referenced him earlier, and the many times that he was pulled over for driving while Black. And as she said, sometimes with guns, never knowing what could happen. I think of the conversations that I've had with my friends and colleagues who are among the most influential Black preachers and pastors in this city. And I know they have good relationships with law enforcement officers because I've seen them interact. But I've also heard the stories they've told me of members of their congregations, how scared they are. I remember having conversations with some of the persons of color, Latinx, Black, of our congregation, and them saying that most of their friends who are persons of color don't want to come to our church because they don't feel safe driving along Alluvial Ave. It's a complex issue. We have law enforcement families in our congregation. I think of Tim. I think of Jenny. I think of Heather's family. And we know they're good people. But we also know that the Black citizens of Fresno and so many other cities across this country are afraid. They're afraid for their lives. They're afraid because they know people who have died at the hand of poor policing practices. It's so complex because this country was founded upon white primacy and the notion that Black and brown bodies are expendable. The Black and brown bodies are, I was going to say, could be treated like animals and be enslaved, but quite frankly, I've never seen anybody flog a cow. We were founded as a country on Black bodies that were beaten, that were used for labor, unpaid labor. So the entire basis of our country is built on an economy that grew out of enslavement. The entire existence of our country was built on the pushing away or the extermination of Native peoples. So how do you unravel what's happening last night? How do you begin to dismember that when the very founding of this country is based on the exploitation and destruction of Black and brown bodies? Police departments, they grew out of Southern groups of white men who got together to hunt down escaped slaves. That was the earliest version of what eventually evolved into our police department. So at the core was a hunting down, of Black men and Black women, Black kids. How do we dismantle that? How do we dismantle that? As Reverend Ranwa Hamami said, and Ida quoted this earlier, she said, the uprising across the country is not only about George Floyd or the 1,252 Black people who have been shot and killed by police violence since January 1st, 2015. The uprising across this country is about their lives, yes, and the foundation of white primacy upon which this country's legal, police, military, economic, education, healthcare, housing, and environmental systems were built on. This is about the thousands more killed by systems and structures that were built on the premise that Black lives are worth less than white lives, and the millions more who face prejudice, racism, and trauma to simply survive in a world that denies their experience, that denies their humanity. I got a call this morning that I wish I hadn't gotten, but it was a friend who, and I'm not going to say the full content of it because it would be hurtful to some people, but it was basically, why are they rioting? Why aren't they just being peaceful? They. And the thing is, we don't even know right now what's going on, and we have to be honest about that, because there's stories that the people who started the violence, at least in Minneapolis, where all of this then flooded the country from, we're hearing stories that they were not members of the community. We're hearing stories that they could have been white people, white supremacists. And the thing is, because of what's happened in this country, we don't know what is truth anymore. There's no example of truth. There's no truth in the seat of power in Washington. There is simply malicious babble. And so this friend was saying, we just have to be nice. We have to be good. We have to do this in a right way. And I remembered that Martin Luther King quote. And He's talking to us, those of us who identify as white, as moderate, as liberal. He said, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in her stride towards freedom is not the white citizens counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Say that again. They prefer a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, and rather want a positive, and do not want a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. Justice is what love looks like in public, Cornel West said. That white moderate liberal who constantly says, I agree with the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Who believes that they can set the timetable for another person's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Black person to wait for a more convenient season. Dr. King continues, I suppose I should have realized that few members of the oppressor race can understand the deep groans and passionate yearnings of the oppressed race. And still fewer have the vision to see that injustice must be rooted out by strong, persistent, and determined action. Strong, determined, persistent action. So at 2:00, where will we be, those of us who identify as white? Will we put our bodies on the line? Will we go down to City Hall? What will be our strong, persistent, and determined action? I got an email yesterday from the president of Harvard University, Lawrence Bacow. And it was his musings on how he is trying to hold the complexity, the fire, the rage, the yearning for justice, and that desire to, let's just have, no tension, please, just a nice, comfortable peace. And he said he's been thinking about what he believes. And I've been thinking, because of his letter, what I believe. And how my beliefs, my Unitarian Universalist faith, our Unitarian Universalist faith, what it tells us, what it compels us to do during this time. So first, I want to share President Bacow's beliefs, because I think they're pretty darn awesome. He says that I believe that all of us, liberal and conservative, Democrat and Republican, whatever our race or ethnicity, want a better life for our children. He said, I believe that America should be a beacon of light to the rest of the world. He says, I believe that our strength as a nation, in no small measure, is because of our tradition of welcoming those who come to our shores in search of freedom and opportunity. Individuals who repay us multiple times over through their hard work, creativity, and devotion to their new home. He says, I believe in the Constitution, the separation of powers, the First Amendment, especially the right to a free and independent press that holds those in power accountable, and to a free and independent judiciary. He says, I believe in the 14th Amendment's guarantee of equal protection of the laws and by the laws for everyone, not just for those who look like me. He says that I believe no person is above the law, regardless of the office they hold or the uniform they wear. Those who break the law must be held accountable. I believe, he says, that one measure of the justice of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. He must have been listening to the sermons here the last couple weeks. He says, I believe we must provide opportunity to those who may not encounter it on their own so they may achieve their full potential. He says, I believe in the power of knowledge and ideas to change the world, of science and medicine to defeat disease, of the arts and humanities to illuminate the human condition. And then he says, and this is so important, those of us privileged bear special responsibilities. As the Gospel of Luke teaches us, from those to whom much is given, much is expected. So I take that and I add into that my Unitarian Universalist beliefs that start with the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Every person has inherent worth and dignity, and it ends at that interconnectedness of all life, that we have a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable parts of that interconnected web of all creation. And in between that are some amazing statements that we believe in justice, equity, and compassion. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We believe that we accept one another and encourage one another to spiritual growth in our congregations. We believe in a free but responsible search for truth and meaning. We believe in the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. And this one always rocks my world. The goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. That's our Unitarian Universalist faith. That's us. That's religion at its best. Because religion, as I often say, is a word that is based on a root that says religion is to put back together again, to make whole. And that's what our faith is calling us to do, to listen to those pieces that have been fractured away and pushed away. Listen to the pieces that have been silenced and bring them back, bring them in, hear them, see them, and know that they're no different than us. And by helping them, helping us all become whole once more. That is how we create the healing of the world. That's how we create justice, what love looks like in public. What love looks like in public. We have a song that we learned that first week of the pandemic. That's a lot of weeks ago. There's a love holding me. There's a love holding all that I love. There's a love holding all I rest in this love. This is the love that's at the core of our faith, that calls us to action, that calls us to do more than simply speak words that sound good in the moment. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, on this morning of pain and rage and sorrow and fire and uncertainty, this morning of the unknown, would you repeat these words after me? There is a love holding me. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. We rest in this love. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
We rest in this love. So I just looked at the clock. That was supposed to be a homily, but I think it turned into a sermon. Kind of just went with where the Spirit took me. So thank you for that. Well, we're just about at the end of the service. I want to thank you. Thank you for coming this morning and being. We needed to be together. And I appreciate that. I really do. I want to take a moment to appreciate Jeremiah Henry, because he spent probably 30 plus hours this week preparing to get us ready for a service that he found out at 6 p.m. last night was not going to be, and then pivoted on a dime and helped create this. And I want to thank Danny for helping us also think through this. Linda T, thank you. I'm looking at you right here on the screen. And Lorenzo for his flexibility as well. So I want us to send lots of love to Jeremiah right now. So send him some J's. He deserves it. Really does. I don't have any real reminders because I think the gravity of the moment just means we're with each other. I do want to say that in 2 weeks from now, on the 14th of June, it will be our virtual New Member Sunday. So if something has been speaking to you in these last weeks as you've joined us in our services, if something spoke to you on the sidewalk along Alluvial Ave on Friday, where we stretched out for almost half a mile of socially distanced, masked individuals, so I don't want to hear anything about us gathering on a sidewalk. If anything has moved you, you could send an email to connections@uufresno.org, connections@uufresno.org, and Patty Bennett, our member services coordinator, will be in touch with you. And Danny's holding up something. City Hall details, she says. I know we're gathering at 2 at City Hall. Okay, I'm going to just do this on a fly. If anybody wants to go down to City, we can't get in the cars together, just not me. So you're going to have to get down to City Hall yourself. I'm going to have my yellow hat. I'm going to have my yellow Side with Love stole, my yellow Unitarian Universalist hat, but I imagine it's going to be very big and lots of people. I'm not sure if we can even try to pull off coordinating, but look at Facebook because Danny's on top of stuff and they may come up with a plan and post it. But as I said about Friday night, I'm going. we'll see who comes. So last but not least, we're going to extinguish the chalice. I'll offer closing words, and then we have our sun benediction. And then I really hope today you will join us in Zoom for our social hour. I think we really need to see each other. We need to look into each other's eyes. We need to hear our voices. It's a chance for, as community, for us to be with each other. We are going to have a designated Zoom room, which will be a brave space for persons of color who, during this traumatic time in our country, that have the bravery and the safety of gathering in a Zoom room specifically for persons of color may be what is best for their spirit, maybe not, but we want to give that opportunity, and Ida Jones will be facilitating conversation there. So, dear ones, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts. And speaking of our hearts, will you take your precious hands and place them over your precious beating heart? Go now in peace. May you leave this place knowing you are good and knowing you are loved. Take your love from this place. Share it with the world. Stay safe until we meet again. And may the longtime sun shine upon you. All love surrounds you. And that pure light that is within you guide your way on. Blessed be. Amen.
Go from here in peace, go with love. Go from here in peace, go with love. Go from here in peace, go with love. In love, go in peace. Shalom and assalamu alaikum.